In Steven Spielberg's horror movie Poltergeist, a suburban family find themselves in the midst of a storm of paranormal activity, which has been stirred up by restless spirits furious at the developers who desecrated their graves. Of course, such things don't happen in real life. Or do they? In 1983, Ben and Jean Williams learned that such terrifying experiences can and do happen to ordinary people if they are unlucky enough to buy a home built on the site of a former burial ground. When the couple first moved into their dream home, they were delighted both with the house and the location. The new development at Newport, Texas was within commuting distance of Houston and boasted immaculate landscaped gardens and highly desirable upmarket homes. But there was a catch. Their gardens seemed to attract an unusual number of poisonous snakes. But this was not all. Lights would switch themselves on and off, the garage door repeatedly malfunctioned, and the atmosphere felt unusually oppressive. No matter how often they told themselves that they were now living the life they had always dreamed of, they could not shake off a sense of foreboding, or the feeling that something or someone was watching them. Whenever something inexplicable occurred, they came up with a rational explanation. The lights and garage door could be due to faulty wiring, the snakes to some natural phenomenon that would be unearthed one day, and their paranoia to the stress of moving. But there was no explanation for the series of large rectangular holes which seemed to form a pattern in their lawn. As soon as they filled them in, the soil would drain out of them, leaving the same grave-shaped impressions. It was the talk of the neighborhood. Their unspoken suspicions finally surfaced when contractors began excavating the backyard of the home belonging to their neighbors, Sam and Judith Haney, and unearthed a pair of rotting coffins containing the corpses of a man and a woman. Nobody slept soundly on the Newport development that night. The following day, their curiosity aroused, the Newport neighbors banded together to make not-so-discreet inquiries into the history of the site, and discovered that it had once been the last resting place of poor black citizens of that region, many of them former slaves. They even managed to locate a retired black gravedigger who was able to identify the disinterred remains as those of Betty and Charlie Thomas, who had died during the Depression. Out of genuine respect for the deceased, the Haneys insisted that the bodies be reburied in the garden and given a decent Christian funeral service, but that did not appear to have appeased the dead couple or to pacify the 60 or so former occupants of Newport's Black Hope Cemetery. Over the following days, the Haneys were subjected to a barrage of poltergeist activity. A clock spat sparks, phantom footsteps marched up and down the empty rooms after dark, and a pair of Judith's shoes disappeared only to turn up on Betty's freshly dug grave. That was it for the Haneys. They instigated legal action against the developer and won the case, but it was overturned on appeal, so they took the only course of action left open to them. They packed up and moved out, leaving a perfectly good house to the ghosts. Meanwhile, Ben and Jean Williams were seriously considering selling up and moving out, but rumors of the weird goings-on had spread through the real estate community, and no one was interested in having the house on their books. Then one night, Ben returned home late to see a figure standing at the end of his bed while his wife slept. It was the last straw. They decided that if they were to succeed where their neighbors had failed in suing the developer, they would have to provide physical proof. So, in the belief that other bodies were buried in their back garden, they decided to unearth these themselves. Jean began digging one afternoon, but found the task too tiring, so she gave the spade to her 30-year-old daughter, Tina. After only a short while, Tina complained of breathlessness and chest pains, then collapsed. She died 2 days later. The Williams family moved out shortly afterwards and settled in Montana.